Welcome to another day in the world of AyAyAyAi, where we discuss all the topics about AI machine learning, and we discuss it with Lucky and a new friend of ours, right? So it's usually three of us, but today Lucky is not able to attend because it's one of those days that he cannot. But I made a new friend, and she's amazing. She's off the chart in the world of AI machine learning influence. Very lucky to have her. And in a podcast that specifically discusses AI machine learning and why DEI is so important in AI machine learning, right? Why do we need to have multiple domain knowledge inside of development and designing of AI machine learning, and to scale it and maintain it, and have that scale to a level that is optimized for better use purposes, right? So I reached out to Noelle and asked her, "Hey, please come to our podcast. Make us happy because we would love to hear you speak in our podcast. I've heard you speak in many different venues. Amazing, amazing amount of uh, way you break it down. It's just so good to hear. So very excited to have you on our podcast. And Noelle, please. I gave you a short, brief introduction. Plus, please go ahead and make it full.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. I'm always super excited to meet new friends. So this is great. And all of your listeners, I get to now hopefully call friends. By the end, they will hopefully feel like I've said something interesting. But maybe I'll start with like my journey right into this space. And I now look back on it and realize maybe how fortuitous it was, but it was a bit intentional as well. But I'll share a little bit about how I got started. I actually never really thought about getting into technology specifically. Um, but my journey into artificial intelligence specifically was related to a little known project, Amazon Alexa. And actually, 10 years ago this month, I remember being at Amazon as an architect. I was architecting cloud solutions at the time. And I remember getting this email from like Jeff Bezos asking the company to contribute to this new cool idea that he had around building, a device for the kitchen that you could talk to. Oh my gosh, it was so exciting. And I, at the time, was a cloud architect and went to my manager and was like, oh my gosh, I totally want to do this Alexa thing. And I remember today, like I look back at it and I kind of laugh because he was like, yeah, no, you can't do that. You're not an AI person. You have no classical training in artificial intelligence. There's no way you can do that work. And I looked at him and was like, huh, as we often do when people give us feedback that seems logical and helpful. But something and granted, I actually have a lot of reasons why I care about artificial intelligence. But at the time I was like, you know what, let me just check. So I went around him and talked to the hiring manager. And of course, he was like, oh my gosh, we need someone with high energy, willing to learn, ample ambition. And I was like, that's all me. And so I joined the team. And I stayed there for 4 years. I often say I got my MBA at Amazon because I learned so much during that time. One, we started off with this tiny little model that no one was using, right? There were less than 1,000 beta users at the time. And then eventually, by the time I left, we had over 60 million users, right? So to go from something that nobody's really using to go to something that now is a household name, I
Wow.
never thought I'd be part of something like that, let alone with no skills. Like I was not now. Granted, I will say I did learn as I went, but that's one of my core philosophies, right? Core values as a human is I learn by doing, right? I learn a little by reading, I learn a little by sitting and listening, but I learn so much more by doing, by putting my fingers on a keyboard and just playing around with it and learning by implementing, testing, asking questions. So my journey into Alexa became much more successful because I ended up building over 100 applications in my first year on the Alexa team. To this day, I still have 20 or so applications still running. These apps are called skills on Alexa. I have 2 million unique users of these skills today. Like every time I go in and look at my analytics, I'm like, who is using this thing that I built? Because I'm just a lowly independent developer writing code on the weekends, right? Some of us are like this, like we do these types of things for fun. But I think it really was interesting for a bunch of reasons. And so one of the reasons we got connected is because I have a huge passion for diversifying the space of artificial intelligence and bringing more unique perspectives in. And in my early days on Amazon Alexa, not in a bad way, I actually thought it was one of the best moments in my career. I called it like the golden years, like where everything was firing. But I looked around and I was the only Latina. I was the only girl. I was also maybe most importantly, the only mom, right? The only parent, which totally changes my perspective. And
Right.
one of my children, I have 6 children. So I'll let that sink in. I have 6 children, but one of them, my firstborn, has Down syndrome. And
Oh,
so that's really why Jeff Bezos's email kind of triggered me a little
hmm.
bit to be like, wait a second, this is my moment to like build something that could impact my son, like could impact his ability to communicate, to technology. I just
Oh,
thought
oh,
I was
oh,
thinking much, much bigger.
right, right,
And
right.
that's why I went around. I mean, I typically try not to go around my management. It's not a good thing for your career in general, but in this case, I was driven by a mission I had, right? To build a better life for people that don't have the same abilities as everyone else. And
Right.
so as a result of that journey, though, I remember saying, hey, we should build skills or applications for Alexa around mindfulness and kindness. And I remember the team looking at me being like, why would you do that? It's a kitchen device. Like, why would you build a mindfulness skill for the kitchen? And in that
Ooh,
moment, I was like, oh my gosh, I'm a mom and they do not know. Like the
it's
kitchen is
so needed.
yes.
Wow.
Like who knew? But it's interesting. This is what happens, right? Everyone is in the room kind of going, we should build timers and we should build like, and everyone's like, yeah, yeah, good idea. And then I come in with this totally unique perspective, not because I'm brown and not because I'm a girl, but just
Right.
because I have a different life that changes my experience in my kitchen. I spend lots of time in that kitchen. So I'm like, I would love to have idea generators. I'd love it to take notes for me. I'm thinking about all these things that would increase my productivity. Anyway, and so I was an anomaly, but those skills, obviously, to this day, are some of the most popular skills on the platform. So I think it's always good to realize that sometimes when everyone around you is like, I'm not sure
Mhm,
that's a good idea, it
mhm.
doesn't necessarily mean that it's not a good idea. You might just be that unique voice in the room that is desperately needed to serve all those other people who don't have representation in that room. And in my case, it was people like my son, people like my dad, right? An aging population. Most of these people, their parents were very young. They were young.
Right.
And so I had an aging, my dad was in his 70s. And I knew in order to support his independence, I was going to have to give him some technology to do that. And Alexa became a huge tool that we used. So quickly from there, I did go to Microsoft after Amazon. I always say I kind of retired to Microsoft because they believe in like a 9 to 5, where at 5 o'clock people actually go home. And Amazon did not have that life. So I was like, oh my gosh, it's so nice to like just go home after 5 o'clock. I actually felt a little weird in my first few months because I'd be
Right.
like, but we're not done. Like, we haven't finished. And people would be like, it's okay. Just close your computer. We'll finish it tomorrow. I'm like,
Wow.
what do you mean? I don't understand. So I was a little like traumatized, I think, from that hustle of being at Amazon. But at Microsoft, I did a very similar thing where we were building a bunch of research models and productizing them into Azure, into Microsoft Azure. And at that time, very few people were calling these things, but it was like our computer vision model, our speech models. And then by the time I left, I mean, even to this day, I think these same models that started off with no one calling them, you'll see a pattern. Today, they get about 5 billion inferences per month. Per month. That means that, boy, I hope we did the right thing at the beginning to think about a billion users today. Did we ask the right questions? Did we support the right use cases? Did we have the right people in the room to think about who will our billion people user base, who will they represent? What will they ask us for? And I think that's a huge part of what makes today different, right? We're in this new world of generative AI and GPT, and we have another chance to build a new set of
Yeah.
solutions with this technology. But we know better now. We know what it meant to build Alexa from scratch and the mistakes that we made. Same with Microsoft in those early days, what we wish we would have done a little differently to scale to billions of users. So today I say to every company, you need a better, like, you need an inclusive team. I call it inclusive engineering. You need an inclusive engineering team to make sure that someone's in the room that represents the mamas and the cat owners and the, like the people who go hiking versus the people that, sit on a beach. Like, everyone thinks different, thinks fast, thinks slow, are analytical versus creative. And the more holistic that team is, I call it a symphony of talent, right? The better that symphony is, the better your outcome will be in serving more people. And that's really the name of the game today. When you're building a model today, you might build it for one, but or even a small little like group of people, maybe even 100,000 people. But the odds are, if there's AI involved, it could be used to serve millions of people. And if you look at Chat GPT, not in years, in months or days, right?
Wait,
Chat
how long has
GPT,
ChatGPT been out? Is it 6 years
been
now?
out, came out in November of last year,
Oh, so it's only been
like
6
six
years?
months.
No. Wait, how long? Wait, what?
Yes,
Because
6
that's
months,
insane. Because I don't know what life looked
100
like
million
before
users.
ChatGPT. I'm sorry, I keep confusing it. Like, it must be like years now.
It feels like years. It feels like years, but it's been months, and we're productizing it, right?
Yeah.
Something that came out months ago that only has, like, today, most of us know ChatGPT as a web application hosted by a research company known as OpenAI. That research company is feeding their models to Microsoft for productization, but most people don't even know that part. They just think it's open, like they're
Oh,
doing business applications in a open research model, which you would never do. Like, it would be going to Microsoft Research or IBM Research and actually building your business on a research capability. You don't do that. Like, you have to harden it, secure it, protect it. There's so much you have to do to make it enterprise use for production use. But again, it takes a diverse group of people for someone to raise their hand and be like, have we thought about how this could break? Have we
right,
thought about who this could hurt?
right.
That doesn't happen if you have a bunch of people that kind of think the same, went to the same school, know the same people. They all look at each other and go, yeah, yeah, it looks good. Looks good. I think it's good. And then you go to production and end up on the Wall Street Journal in a bad way.
So, folks, if you're listening, this is why I've been so interested in having Noah come into this podcast and discuss the fact that, look, this podcast, we have three themes, right? My favorite, which is my very personal one, is hardware, right? I look at semiconductor chips, I look at the full infrastructure, and I said point A to B, first mile and last mile. How do we do the hardware infrastructure? So that way we can eliminate the hardware rather than use the hardware for AI machine learning purposes. And the other two, which is still top three, right? Is the fact that there are startups picking up ChatGPT. There are startups that doesn't even know what ChatGPT is. There are startups in a wide range, right? We
Yes.
spend hundreds and billions of dollars in getting startups funded, so the startups can, produce the next level of Google, Facebook, Amazon, right? But a lot of the startups are thinking of like AI machine learning as a far concept. But this is what you need to hear, that this is not a far concept. This is an old concept. This has been around for a very long time. And Noel is a proof of, how last 10 years has taken this one Alexa concept into this billion user concept, right? Um, Stop and think about that for a second. If you're in a startup, stop and think about that for a second. That, like, how would your startup react to an AI machine learning competitor? As in, your competitor is AI machine learning enabled. They're able to do all your tasks that you provide in less than 25% of the effort that you put in, right?
Yes.
So I want you to think about that for a second. And the third topic, which is the most important one, Noel's been in, just, you know, uh, like, this is a gift from the universe right now to talk about the DEI fact, the fact that I really care about military veterans to join this AI machine learning world. Not because you will design or develop or deploy one, but your input matters. Like, you wouldn't believe it. And it's all matter of, like, if you're listening and you're telling yourself, well, I will never do AI machine learning. Well, Noelle had to go through her hiring manager to, get her position that she's in. Like, probably, I think you're very grateful that to yourself that you did that, right?
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So
So many
anybody who's
times we
thinking that
listen.
they can't, they should be looking at themselves like, well, who's stopping me?
That's right. That's
Only
right.
you yourself are stopping yourself, thinking this AI machine learning is all technology, has lots of coding and programming. but you have to please spend at least 45 minutes to figure out what are some of those non-technical capabilities that AI machine learning will require, and how it is that you, who thinks you are non-technical, will be able to contribute to that. Because if you don't, the type of AI machine learning that we will have in the future will impact you, impact your sons and daughters, impact your mom and dad, impact the community that you're a part of. AI machine learning will, let me pause there and say, I've looked at every single places I can look at and say, where can I not have an AI machine learning? I have yet to find one that I could solidly stick for more than an hour. Because an hour later, I'm like, oh yeah, that's how AI machine learning will be used
Yeah,
on that
yeah.
one, right? So, so I want you to think about it from that perspective. Only you yourself are stopping yourself if you're a military veteran, thinking you don't have much to contribute. You have tons to contribute, and your military soft skills, the hard skills, all the
Yes.
skills that military has trained you on, it's easily transferable to AI machine learning language or AI machine learning community, because
Yep.
you are able to bring that perspective with conviction, as in you are literally pushing for an idea that you know are worth it, not just for yourself but for your community, for your partners, for your left and right, whoever's sitting next to you or standing next to you or serving next to you, whatever the case is. You care about these people, and that's what matters in AI machine learning conversation. You gotta bring that to the table. And I cannot thank Noel enough for clarifying that, because as I push this idea, I always need a backup, right?
Yes,
And Noel is
you're
my
like
backup, my new friend, my
ratified.
backup.
Yes, and I will say the other thing that I find, I employ, of course, I try to find as diverse group of skills as possible. It includes veterans though, and one of the skills that they bring to the table is the level of discipline and rigor that is required for these projects. That is natural to someone who's kind of been raised or at least trained in a military setting, because there's just a different level of discipline that is identified as part of that. And one thing that we don't have enough of, especially as we're trying to build these solutions, is adhere to guidelines, even identifying those guidelines, thinking about the consequences of those guidelines, all very natural thought processes for someone who comes from kind of a veteran history or space of any part of the military, right? It doesn't just mean if you're tactical, like any part of the military. I have found that that skill set just lends itself to artificial intelligence specifically because of the precision that AI requires, and that you're already used to kind of working in bounds that maybe you wish you could control, but you don't. And AI is very much the same way. So, like you said, I think it's very natural. You'll find a lot of comfort, honestly, in this space, especially if you think like, oh no, I can't do AI. Today, we're in a world of low code, no code artificial intelligence, which means you actually are probably using AI today and you don't even realize it, right? Every time you go to your phone and it auto populates your sentence, right? That's artificial intelligence, right? Generating what it thinks you might say. And many of us are like, oh, yeah, it's good enough. And we click yes or we tab over. Or anytime, of course, that we see, like our inbox, right? We have a spam folder. There's an AI, an algorithm that's analyzing all our emails, sometimes better than others, but analyzing our email and choosing what we should see or not. And there's a ton of stuff in our spam folder we never have to see because AI has taken that. But someone had to tell that model, what does spam look like?
Right.
What's the definition of spam? And today, that instruction is actually provided. GPT gives us the ability to provide that instruction with natural language. So you don't have to know how to write Python, though I encourage you if you want to do that. You don't have to write Python, right? You can actually just know enough about the problem in order to ask a model or tell a model instructions on how to solve it. It knows the detail of the answer, but the guidance on how to answer a problem, that has to come from a human. And those of us kind of who come from a military background are much better at creating those definitions and those boundaries, I find, than others. So certainly an area to look into.
That low code and no code is literally the way I would tell everybody. Like, look, if okay, so I'll give you my background, right? I was in the Air Force 10 years. Um, was on my way to do 20 and retire. But on my last minute, right before my 10th year, I decided, well, I'm gonna get out. And I'm gonna get out so that way I can be a Linux administrator. Now, let me tell you the transition from somebody who has never sat behind a laptop or on a keyboard and typed in any commands other than DOS when I was like about
Yeah.
10, 11 years old, right? I did a DOS for like, Windows. That was my last time I ever touched anything like for that kind of OS purposes, right? But I knew that I wasn't going to stay in the military, so I said I'm going to do Linux. There was no transition. Like it was like you woke up one day and you said, "Well, that's what I have to do now," right? Because I did DOS for like a few years when I was young. I can do Linux. So I got out of military without a zero plan and how it is that I will survive outside. But I said, well, I will just figure out this technical because that's the other experience that I have outside of military.
Yeah.
And lo and behold, I'm in the technical world where I don't use Linux at all. Like I probably know a lot more than I need to know about Linux, but I don't use it ever. Right. So when I say I'm like transitioning from technical or transition from non-technical to technical, I'm still transitioning because there's so much to cover in technical world that you cannot even list it long enough to say like I will go through this in my lifetime. Right. It's just not possible. So when you fear technical things, which like I did, it's natural. But to overcome it is to just start engaging, right? Just start thinking about it. Start building a roadmap in your head. Say, like, even if the roadmap leads to 0.05 miles, build that roadmap, right? It's important. And for AI machine learning, I think the open source information that you have, if you heard about low code right now, low code, no code right now, and you're thinking like, okay, what is low code, no code? Well, type that on YouTube because after Google, your next best search engine is YouTube. You type that in and you find out about low code, no code, and get started somewhere, right? And if this is the first step you take, I think I've done my job very well. I think Noelle has done her job very well because that's what we want. We want people that are on the edge, sitting there thinking like, "What's going to happen to my job in the next 10 years? Oh my God, where am I going to find a job in the next 5 years?" Because things are so technical.
Yeah.
If that's your mindset, this is where you start. You look into YouTube and you start going down the rabbit hole of finding AI machine learning eventually. Because no matter what technology or what job you'll end up with, you will have to do something with AI machine learning. Either
Yeah.
to either guide that AI to do a better job, teach that AI how it is that you would like the AI to perform. Like for me, example, my biggest headache of the day is scheduling, right? Well, how would you like to have a scheduling AI that is like almost a digital twin of yourself to say, you know, Steve has all these things going on. This is what he would like to do as far as scheduling. Well, what if it's not your daily basic, daily task for your day to day life? What if you just want to go to vacation for a week within that 52 weeks out of the year? How could you have an AI give you that comfort of like, well, I don't have to really do anything. AI takes care of it for me, right? If you don't see that coming down the pipeline in, I don't know, months or a year, I think it's months already, it's because of low code, no code. Because somebody can create a scheduler digital twin by just using prompt engineering,
Right.
right? So what I'm getting at is that the fact that if you start, you will end up in AI machine learning, no matter how non-technical you want to be. Because AI, and this is where I take a slow breather and say, AI machine learning is not a technology. It's a process. It's a process. And this process needs people more than technology. Because whoever the people are will create the process in the middle, that technology will come out of it. So if you think about it, PPT, people, process, technology, AI is that process. The machine learning is that process. And technology is the other side of the rainbow, where all the M&Ms and
Yeah.
skills. But the people is the one they on the side, and we have to connect that bridge. And one of the people that will connect that bridge is you, if you're listening, right? You are the future. Like if you're a female military veteran, thinking to yourself like, oh, how am I gonna do this if I'm a mom? How am I gonna do this if I have all these things that I did in the military, but doesn't really translate into AI machine learning? Well, I'll tell you, I used to just carry guns and clean them up and put them back in a rack. That was pretty much my job. And in between, I did many other things, but none of them are technical whatsoever. And I did that transition from this very non-technical to something super technical. And I can tell you, it never gets super technical because that spectrum of technical, nobody can ever achieve that, right? Because as much technology you know, you still don't know enough.
Right.
So you will never get super technical. So this is like such a fresh breath of air for me because like I get to talk to somebody who can go dive deep into that. That low code, no code. Woo!
Yes,
That
yes.
was a
And I
fire.
I always tell people, I'm like, it's the good news is you can do whatever you want. You can be as technical you as you want to be, or you could take on a non-technical role and still be it's kind of like maybe 5 years ago, maybe 10 years ago, we started to say the exact same thing about cloud, right? Every company will be in the cloud, meaning moving off of data, like companies should not own data centers. They should rent the hardware that they need in order to do what they need to do to run their business. And so when we first started, we're like, every company is a tech company. If you are not a technologist, it doesn't matter because the company you work with will be leveraging technology. And now we've expanded that to cloud. We've now expanded that to artificial intelligence. And there's a meme out there that says, it's related to like being having a job and art being worried that AI is going to take your job, right? So we often say, like, don't be worried that AI is going to be replacing you. Worry about someone using AI replacing you, which is exactly what you said about like startups out there, right? If it is a differentiator for you to understand the technology, it's more about literacy than it is about implementation. Some of us like implementation. We are excited to go and get into a GitHub repo or like build something on the weekend. But there's some of us that care more about the user experience and changing what it is for a customer to get what they need the first time. I mean, many of us have used chatbots, right? That are broken. Most of them are, right? Where we go into a chatbot, we ask it a question, it fails. And then we end up having to call. And then we call and we get a IVR or voice system that's like, press one to continue. And you're like, assistant or representative or agent. You're just trying to get to a human. And all of that's because the digital experience isn't great. But making it great isn't really about, to your point, the technology. It's actually about the process of understanding the customer's problem and figuring out how to solve it without engaging a human being, which is entirely possible. The tech exists. The problem is we haven't married the technology, the right technology, to the right process to solve that problem. And that's a human thing, a people thing. A human has to go, oh, I know how to solve this problem. I can teach a machine to do this work for me, and then I'll just monitor it. It's like I always say, AI is kind of like a small child, and I have a bunch of them, so I understand this analogy maybe better than most. But it's like a small child. I always say, like, it's an AI system is never wrong. It's just untrained. And it's kind of one of those things like you do not expect, like in this case, GPT, it's super young model. You do not expect a 2-year-old, like, you don't, as soon as they learn to walk, be like, okay, now your job is to run everywhere. Even though sometimes 2-year-olds will do this, they end up bumped, bruised, hurt. Sometimes they break a bone. Like, because you walk before you run. You crawl before you walk, right? And you run before you fly. There is a sequence intentionally, right, to provide these services. And the good news is humans, meaning you as someone who cares about the experience you're building, you control that. You could run if you want to, but you could end up in trouble. You could end up like, I won't name the name, but a very large bank decided to launch a model, an AI model into production to start doing credit evaluations of their customers before they gave them lines of credit. It was based on a bunch of data. That data was not monitored by humans. Again, not technical monitoring, just evaluation of what does this data say. That data said, basically in a 1940s fashion, that if you're a man, you make more than a woman. And if you're a woman, you likely don't have a job. And therefore, if you're a woman, you'll get less credit than a man, regardless of the other information in your profile. And they went to production, and real people like myself and my husband applied for this credit. And to my dismay, I am the breadwinner in the family, like significant breadwinner in the family. And he got more money than I did on his credit limit. And I was like, what is wrong with this? And it turned out artificial intelligence that was unchecked, right, took an assumption based on massive amounts of data that was not checked. There obviously wasn't a woman in there being like, hey, did you notice there's something wrong with this? right? But it's a lack of testing, of rigor, of discipline around delivering a solution that serves everyone. And that's why I think it's so important that this diversity of thought, we talk about how do we get diversity of thought in the building of these products, from user experience to product ownership to product management to engineering. And there's a place for all of our, like, wherever your brain sits, wherever you feel the most comfort, there is a place for you, because there aren't enough people being born today to do the AI work we need to do over the next 10 years. If everyone who was born today did that work, we'd still be short. So the time is now. Like, I always encourage, and maybe to give a little bit more inspiration to those of you on the fence, I when I started my career, like when I was in high school, I remember my high school like a economics teacher pulled me aside and was like, "I'm not going to graduate you. You're not going to pass." I didn't like economics, so it's true. I didn't like the class. I couldn't be bothered with it. And he's like, "I'm not going to pass you. You can't go to summer school. You're just not going to get your diploma." And of course, I'm a Latina, so I was like, "Fine, no problem. I will go to a university without your stinking diploma." And that's what I did. So I dropped out of high school, never got a diploma, applied for university and got accepted because I did pass a test that let me do that. However, I got to university and found the same thing. Like, just every room I was in, I was an anomaly. I was the only brown person and one of 3 or 4 women in classes of hundreds, right? And I went to an engineering university, but still, when I was there, I would get all of these weird, just, I'd call them now microaggressions because I know what they are, but all these weird things people would say. They would ask me questions that I had no business knowing as a freshman in school. And I'd be like, "I don't know." And they're like, "You don't know that? Huh? Like, this is weird. Like, should I know that?" Now I look back and I'm like, I didn't even need to know that. Why would you ask me that? Why would you like poke this little bit of doubt in me to be like, "You don't know that? Oh, well, I mean, that's unfortunate." And then they walk away. Or once I was on a project and they were like, "I mean, you probably won't be able to do this work because it's super technical." I can't tell you how many times people have told me, "This is pretty technical work, Noelle." I'm like, I mean, I am an engineer. Like, why would you? But it's all of this systemic bias, right? They see me and they see what my economics professor saw. They see customer service. They see, "You'd be great in, like, working at the mall." I'm like, what? Like, no. So there's part of that that's in our own brain, right? The imposter syndrome of like, can I do this? But it's going to be, unfortunately, also fueled a little bit by this systemic unconscious bias by those you're around. But being an anomaly actually helps build better software. And we're starting to see this across the world, as far as women specifically and people of color becoming more, and even I'd say military veterans, right, providing this unique perspective. Like, as these, diverse opinions get added to the mix, those diverse opinions are actually becoming leaders, because that diversity of opinion needs to lead this effort, needs to know to pause and ask questions and look around and be willing to be different. And being, of course, a minority, we know what it's like to be different. Being in the military, you know what it's like to be different than everyone else who's not never had that experience. And so I often say, like, yes, I ended up leaving college early to go work for IBM, because it was Y2K and they desperately needed help, kind of like today. I think if I was in college today and I was thinking about going into AI, I could get a job in AI without a degree, because they need people so badly, they're willing to train you on the job. And that wave doesn't come very often, but it
No.
happened in Y2K. I think we're there right now, where you can get a job and a company will be like, "Hey, I like your attitude. I like
Yes.
your positivity. I like your, discipline and rigor and work ethic, all things that are uniquely accessible to someone who, had a military career." Like, when you bring what made you successful in the military to a corporate environment, like, that is exactly what they're looking for, and there aren't a lot of people like that. Now, I say that as an intrapreneur. So that means, like, I take
Mhm.
everything I do and I work inside big companies. I today lead AI solutions at Accenture, one of the largest consulting companies in the world. And I did that. I am unique. Every meeting I'm in, I'm like, "Can I ask another question? Can I can I say something else?" Like, they're tired of me already. They're like, "Okay, Noelle, fine. What? What? Again, what with you?" Um, but that's kind of who we are. Like I will call it as I see it, and that is a unique but very valuable skill in artificial intelligence. But that being said, there's also that same like characteristic is super important for, I say entrepreneurship because I like being in big companies. I basically build startups inside of big companies. The AI team is brand new in Accenture, so it's like a little startup. The other side, though, is to actually be an entrepreneur and build your own business, but the skill set is the same, right?
Mm.
So don't necessarily think the only way to get autonomy, the only way to build something innovative and new and exciting is to go off on your own. Certainly you can, but you can also get that same capability by moving into an organization like a large organization, Amazon, Microsoft, IBM, Accenture. They're so large that they're constantly building small businesses to support innovation. And you just have to, like I said, if you're proud and confident in your experience, in your ability to deliver quickly, follow, build and follow guidelines, be disciplined in your approach, and be an enthusiastic like person, like what we call disagree and commit. You might not agree with what's happening, but you'll disagree and commit to doing the job. That's a hard thing, hard human thing for people to do, but something we learn really well in the military. So
Oh
something
man.
I think that becomes very valuable as a skill, whether you're inside a company or starting your own.
Like if you could look at my brain right now, it's like a symphony, like a whole
Yeah, yeah.
orchestra is just playing all this music that I'm just like, this is the music to my ear. I'm loving it.
Yeah.
Because the whole time, I think the full spectrum you covered, right? From having that microaggression experience to like, being hired because of your personality and standing out, right? That's the full of bias spectrum, right?
Yes.
Good
From one
and
end to
bad.
the other.
So if you understood what Noelle was talking about as far as biases that she has experienced, good or bad, guess what? If you're in a startup and you're looking to solve bias problems, you should start yesterday. You should
Yes.
get your team
We
together
need you
now. This
desperately.
team of 10 people can solve so much bias problem all around AI machine learning world. Because Accenture, like she said, Noel said, there's a very small team. Well, okay, you got Accenture, you got McKinsey, you got Boston Consulting, you got KPMG, EY. Those
Hmm.
are just giant consulting firms that probably employs good portion of American employments, right? And then you look at the full spectrum of government agencies, full spectrum of rest of the world commercially, right? And you're able to say, well, you're going to develop an AI and you're going to develop it yourself, and you just started yesterday. Can I be your bias auditor?
Right.
Think about that for a startup, right? Like, can I audit your biases? Because you are full of bias. You will be, good or bad, because you're going to favor one side more than the other. How does that impact your business statement at the end of the year? Right?
Yep.
Because you're going to find out very sooner or later that what you have deployed, since you didn't monitor it correctly for the biases, you weren't able to detect it for the purpose of, let's say, your quarterly went down, right?
Yep.
Or your quarterly shot up, and you cannot even tell, like, wait, why is my quarterly so up? What happened with the bias that it provided me with that high quarterly earning, right? So that the spectrum of full of bias. Look, I'll give you one tips into it. Machine learning is built on bias. It just has to be, because
Yes,
machine
because it's
learning is
built on
replicating
data.
your human brain's behavior and saying, how do we put that into the machine and let the machine do what a brain does? But let that machine focus on attention, one specific attention piece, right? So if you look at large language model, in the first paper that was kind of circulated about large language model and transformers is attention is all you need. So if you build a machine learning capability that has a good attention amount that human cannot have, that's your startup,
Yep.
right? If a humans are not able to sustain their attention towards it, let's say, for example, bias, let's say, think about regulations, think about GRC, compliance,
Yep.
governance.
Compliance. Yes.
People cannot keep their focus on these topics 24 hours a day. There are few people that are trained in this topic, but even they need assistance from AI machine learning capabilities to say, how do I do better job at keeping people up to compliance? So that way we can detect bias, we can do things according to the governance, right? And we can avoid risk and follow our risk matrix, right? Think
Oh
about
my
that. So if
gosh.
you're in a startup, Go for it. This is
Yeah.
your world. And Noel just opened it up for you.
Yes, and actually, I'll give you a couple $1,000,000 ideas. I wish
Please,
more people would go
great. Let
after
me get my
them. So
notes out.
yeah, yeah. So if you think about today, the world of generative AI, there's a little capability, GPT, that we can use. However, that model itself is trained on the world's data, right? It's trained on 499 million plus words across hundreds of millions of websites, like massive amount of data. To your point, all that data was it's internet data. And there's only a certain demographic of people that could publish content on the internet over the last 40 years. Like or 20 years. There's only a handful, honestly, of demographics and likely not minorities. So it's already going to be biased based on who was able to write the content these models are trained on. So that's the first thing is yes, content moderation, just being able to make sure like you could build a startup that just does content moderation for like large language models, for GPT models, just as a service to say, and here's why is because companies are not going to want to do this work. They're going to need to do it, but they're not going to want to, which is exactly what you said. Like, this is the magic.
Third party,
Yes, you become
regulated third party.
exactly. You become that vehicle. Another thing that models are not great at is knowing what the truth is for a company. So when you use this model, it knows the truth as aggregated across all these hundreds of millions of websites. But the truth for a specific company, right? Like Federal Express I'm looking at like uh, Sony, or I'm looking at brands around me, like whatever's true for them, right? The model is not going to know what's true for a specific company that's using it. So we call this content verification. You need to create a team that's going to monitor outcomes, like responses from this model, and make sure that it's actually doing what it's supposed to do. This is often done through a role called prompt engineering, but it's a very specific type of prompt engineering, which is how do I make sure that the model is being accurate? And you can't monitor every single response, especially when you get into the billions of requests that we talked about at the beginning. So, how do you take a sample of that? How do you create a mechanism for monitoring, as you mentioned? Like all of this, these are like little capabilities that you can offer to an organization. And then the last one, which maybe is one of my favorite, I call them prompt defenders, right? How do we do basically cybersecurity in a prompt engineering world? So it's adversarial testing. If you have a passion for security, think about how could I use adversarial testing in its traditional concept and apply it to this new world of conversational prompts, right? So it's basically how do I do conversational adversarial testing? And this is a new world. You literally don't have to know it today. And over the next 6 months, you could learn enough to become the best in the world at it because no one's doing it right now. It's all on you. If you want to do it, you can, but it does require you to be ambitious, focused, like resilient, and go after it. But no one is an expert, really, to your point, right? No one knows all the things. So you find a niche that is something that you care about. I think that's probably the biggest thing. Finding something that you care about doing. I have a special needs child. I'm caring for my dad. I have a lot of kids. I care about accessibility. So all the projects that I'm on have accessibility as part of the solution, which makes me get up early and stay late, right? It encourages me to do more. But without that hook on your personal mission, you'll grow tired of doing the work. And this is not easy work. It's super rewarding, but being in the technology field is not easy. Not just because the technology has to be learned, but because of the bias that you'll run into being different, thinking different as someone in the military, being different because you're a woman or a mom or any number of things because you're one of those people who like to plan out your vacations on an Excel spreadsheet, right? That's going to be different than other people who maybe are the ones who fly, are like me. I just like go with the flow. I show up 27 minutes before my flight, like I'm like, I go really fast. But there's fast people, fast thinkers, slow thinkers. A book was recently released about this, but you need them both, right? You need the CEO and the CTO. You need the security person and the innovation officer. Like all of these perspectives have to come together in order to create a good solution. So just pick one and then be willing to deliver a service that helps a company do something that either they don't want to do or they don't have the time or resources to do. And that's, I mean, any one of those spots, you can find a multi-million dollar opportunity.
Multi, should we go for billion?
Sure. I mean, it's up
Sure.
to you.
So, yeah,
How much
you.
hunting do you want to do? This
Yeah,
comes down to the sales side. Like you can sell this.
you can
It
sell
is a
this.
needed thing, but many people don't.
Can
You
you
could,
deliver fast enough?
yeah,
Can you
but
deliver in
you don't
yes?
even have to be a good to build $1 million business on this. And actually, there's a guy. His name's Kevin Scott. He wrote an article called "1,000 True Fans," and he basically said if you get 1,000 true fans, they only have to give you $100 a year in
Right,
order for you to have a six-figure income.
right.
So extrapolate that though a little bit, and now you only need 100 people to give you $1,000 or
Mhm.
right, like, and you just it's
Right.
we call it $1 million math. Figure out what number do you need to be happy and live a good life, and work backwards from that. Figure out how many customers you need and what value do you need to generate in order to get that customer to pay you what they want, and then start selling it like hotcakes. If you did the right value generation, right? If you created the right value, you won't even have to sell it. You'll just have to talk about it, and people will come and ask you for it, which is what my world is right now.
Well, I think you do it so well that you need to
Yes,
set up
I think
a
you all
team
can do it though.
team
I
of
don't think
5,
it's special
6,
sauce.
and that team of 5 and 6 can do incredible things for the rest of their lives.
Yes,
But that
and
wave you
rewarding
mentioned
things.
that
Yes.
wave you mentioned, that Y2K wave that has come and gone, and you see the AI wave. Um, I'm not gonna get into the AI summer and AI winter because that is a concept that people in AI like really knee deep into it thinks about. I think about it from the hardware perspective. How can
Sure.
hardware chokehold the process of AI machine learning? But even if you're thinking for next 10 years, I can guarantee you next 10 years of AI is not slowing down anytime soon,
I
right?
agree.
AI summer and AI winter is a concern, don't get me wrong. But if you're a startup, if you're a military veteran looking to stay relevant for next 10 years, you got to start looking at this because just like Y2K has changed bubble.com, excuse me, dot com bubble,
Yeah.
that has produced a side effect, an aftermath of that, right? This aftermath of AI machine learning is to say, well, we used to do boring things. We used to do things that we didn't have to do because we felt like we're not creative enough. This is your chance to look into that creative side of you. This is the side of you. If you're an entrepreneurial spirit that is dealing with the manager inside of you that says like, well, let's look at the quarterly only, and then your technician inside of you that is telling you like, well, just focus on this piece that has been around for the last 30 years. Break that entrepreneurial spirits out of you, man, or a woman. Get that out of you. That entrepreneurial spirit will take you far, not just in a startup, but just for your next career, your the role that you're looking to do next. Get that out of you because I'm telling you, every person has those three: entrepreneurial, manager, and technician. But we listen to the manager mostly because the technicians are kind of backward. Again, I'm a technician.
Yeah.
But entrepreneurial ones that is going to just drive you nuts. And if you're not focusing on that entrepreneurial part of you, that spirit part of you, I'm telling you, this is the time to engage with that wave because there are a lot of entrepreneurs out there. There are a lot of people. I'll give you one example. Ellie K. Miller from LinkedIn. She posted this one post, which was amazing. She said, get your team together now. That team of 1 to 10 that will bring in millions of dollars in revenue for you for next 10 years. You only need 4 to 5 people, if not team of 10.
Yep.
Very small startup, very small, tight knitted community of people that will be able to perform to the level that we have never seen in human history. And I can guarantee you that right now because I agree with her 100%. She
Yep.
stated it very well. So I want to give a shout out to Ellie K. Miller for that because it's necessary. It's necessary that you look at what everything Noel has just gone through, right? All this information you already know because it's your listening. You're able to comprehend and put that together in your head. How would you go about it? So I have a lot of military buddies that are in cybersecurity world. So if they're listening, get your prompt defender online. Get it together because
Right. Like
the
there's a cape
cybersecurity
involved.
issues are exponentially growing. Like what we thought we solved, it's only the technicians that's telling us like, yeah, it's solved. from last year. Well,
Right.
last year was last year. This year's problem is far different than what it was before.
Yep.
As you can tell, I got super excited. But let me come back to reality a little bit more, right? In today's day, and this is my last question to you. We're coming to the close of the conversation here. In today's world, right? Um, when you speak to somebody who has been in charge of spending money, the CFOs, the CIOs, or you have to talk to a decision maker who has to meet that quarterly goal, right? Most likely they're already working on problems that they've been patching together for the last 10, 15 years.
Right.
We don't have time to innovate. Innovation costs money. Innovation is the budget of R&D that hasn't been allotted yet. If the R&D is zero, I can only go up $1, right? With
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
mentality, um, how do you engage? How do we get them to see it differently? That decision makers, because we talked about startups, we talked about veterans, or just anybody who's looking for employment. But how do we change those decision makers, those guys that are on C-suite level? What do we do? How do we get them to come on board, get on the boat before the chopper takes off?
Yes, exactly. I would say it goes back to something we talked about earlier, which is value. So AI in the past we've done a pretty bad job of going into organizations, selling them on, hey, let's talk about and assess, what we can build for you. Let's even maybe build a pilot. We call it pilot purgatory or POC purgatory, where we build something and it never sees the light of day and it never goes into production, never gets used. And that's happened over the last, I'd say, 7, 8 years at most companies that have decided to dip their toe in the water of artificial intelligence. They're like, yeah, I just don't get it. I don't see why we would do this. It seems hard. It seems expensive. It seems to have special skills. And so what we're seeing now is a difference because in the first conversation I have with a client, I can demonstrate value. I can go in and do an actual demo. And you can see this like on my YouTube channels. And I'm actually starting a series on This Week in Generative AI on LinkedIn. So you'll see all these demos that I do every day about like, here's what a new flight booking sequence could look like with generative AI. Here's what a new hotel booking sequence could look like. Here's what a new conversational patient management system will look like. And I can just simulate it with a, Azure OpenAI service, for example. It's a playground. It's just my words into a model that I don't fully understand, right? I mean, I understand probably more than most, but you don't need to because you're just asking it a question and getting it a response. That's what prompt engineering is. Then I start working with that. I ask a slightly different question to get a better answer. I give it more data as a premise to get a better answer. I give it more context. And while I'm doing that, I finally get, oh my gosh, if I give it this much data with this question, I get the perfect answer. And then I show that to my clients. And when I show it to them in that first conversation, I build the trust that was really hard to build before. Because in the past, in order to build an AI model that did the same thing, I actually needed their data. I needed a lot of it and I needed time to train a model and then, to train it and then do a bunch of inferencing to test it. All of that took weeks, sometimes months. It still was short, but still a long time. Now I can do it in days or weeks instead of months or years. So the time to like, that's why I said you really want to get into the habit of learning by doing. Get into these tools. I mean, look at Midjourney. Midjourney is a tool you could actually become someone who understands how to use Midjourney to deliver marketing value to clients. Microsoft Designer, become an expert in Microsoft Designer. If you look at that tool, and I'll give you these links so that you can add it to the show notes. But if you put it in, you can give it an image. It'll generate 10 or 15 social media images for you. You can then give it words to change how it generates. If you get good at that, that becomes a skill set that could replace multiple people inside a company, right? Multiple people that used to be doing the asset generation, the asset tagging, the image generation, content generation. You could then use GPT to do headline generation, content development, blog creation. Like all of a sudden, you become the engine, the human that is able to tie this technology together to solve a problem. But right now, I think the biggest thing with executives saying yes is that they need to see that it's real. If
Mhm.
you show them that it's real in a conversation, I have had literally our clients say, do you have a proposal? I'll sign it right now. I'll sign it right now. That doesn't happen except when you can prove without a shadow of a doubt that they will get the value that you're promising. And the only way to do that is to be able to, I always say I can go from the boardroom to the whiteboard to the keyboard. It's a unicorn type skill, but it's 100% worth developing because you don't need anyone else to close a deal. And as entrepreneurs out there, that's what you're going to have to do. You're going to need to be the business user who understands what the business needs from a value perspective, but you're also going to have to be kind of that user experience person who understands what it needs to look like to be delivered well. And then you're going to have to be a tiny bit of a technologist in a no code way, right? To actually connect to the right technology all in that first meeting. And I'm telling you, right now, this was hard to do even 6 months ago. Today, it's much easier because all the pieces are in place. It just takes a human like those who are listening to actually piece those things together and get it in front of people. There's not enough of us on the planet that are doing that work of collecting the technology that's available and putting it in the perspective of a business so that they can see where the value is. Lots of people building the tech, lots of people saying we need it in business. There's no one in the middle that can say, here's the tech to solve your business problem, and I can do it in 3 weeks, 4 weeks, 10 weeks.
Did you just say there's lack of process developers? Is that what you're saying? Oh, so there's people there's
Interesting.
nobody in the middle doing the process.
That's right.
Hmm.
That's right. We got
Wait, so
people and we got tech, but we need someone to be the bridge. And this is the
somebody to be
secret
the
skill.
bridge. Yeah, and I'll tell you, the list of jobs that are being threatened. Only way to solve it is to say I'm the solution with an AI
Yes,
because
exactly.
all the jobs, solution architect jobs, right? Well, you're not in any threat unless you are using AI machine learning
That's
because
right. And
all
I
the
always
solution
say,
architects that
like,
are
why
not
not
doing
be a
AI
solution
machine learning.
architect? Like, that's such a great philosophy in life. Find a problem that needs solving and architect a solution. Today, the no, like, literally, the models are commoditized. The machine learning models you need to do a better job, they're already out there. You just have to tap into them. You need to know a little bit of code to maybe, access it via an API. But that's why I said you need a CTO and a CEO, right? You could be the one who orchestrates the business value and then tap someone who can build your app for you, right? This is why we built an inclusive team. It's completely accessible and no significant skills, nothing you can't learn in a weekend coding class or a 6 week boot camp on how to build applications. There's a freecodecamp.com, right? You can learn to code on your own and be able to build enough business value to get funding to hire a developer. And that is, I mean, that's the magic that is entrepreneurship today. That was very hard to do even 6 months ago.
I well, I'm kind of sad right now. This
I
conversation is
know.
it's like why do we schedule for 1 hour? We need 2 hours for this. But we
Yeah,
covered majority of the topics. We covered transitioning from your current job to the next job. Please do, because if you're looking at your jobs that doesn't have AI machine learning down the pipe, most likely they're well, we're not going to go there. But talk about startups. We talked about startups a lot. And we talked about decision makers and what decisions to make if you're looking at the technology adaptation for the future purposes. Because I understand as a CIO, CEOs, you have a 10-year-old problem that you're trying to solve today. But guess what? You have a bridge to jump from to say, well, instead of fixing those problems, how can AI fix that problem? Let's start looking into that solution. Give
yep.
yourself that 45 minutes for that demo just to see maybe we don't need to keep patching that server. Maybe we need to do something different. Maybe we have to adapt to the fact that cloud and AI combined will be able to take that server away from our a budgetary process, right? Um, I started the conversation with "AyAyAyAi," is it mildly? But man, I am pumped right now, like, "AyAyAyAi!"
Exactly. I was like, D, I. Yes,
Well, Noelle,
diversity, equity, inclusion. It's been amazing.
D, "AyAyAyAi."
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Say it again, right? So Noelle, tell us quickly, where and how can we keep in touch, find you, get on your calendar maybe like those crazy CEOs and CIOs are trying to do right now.
That's right.
What can we do to keep listening to you?
Absolutely. Well, I do a ton of these innovation sessions, kind of like this, but specific to businesses. Of course, I have a website, noellerussell.ai. You can come find me there. But the best way for us is actually just like you are this way. We want to have a real connection, be real friends, actually connect with each other one on one, have a conversation. You can ask a question. So, the best place to do that is on LinkedIn. So, feel free to connect with me. You could just go to linkedin.com/in/noelleai, and that is me. I would be so happy to add you to my list
Mhm.
of friends. And it's been amazing. So thanks for this awesome conversation. As you can tell, we're both excited about this. It's a great time
Yeah,
to be in this space.
yeah, I am thrilled. But today has been a special day because to have the capability to break it down using the languages you've used, well, guess what, folks? You're gonna have to learn that. Learn prompt engineering using the correct language, identify and label and make decisions. Please do that. And until the next time,